August 27th and 28th, we're having a 2-day conference in Illinois. And then on the 26th, we're having a Homes online course. And then in the Northeast, we may have a course in the fall. Benefits of this is continuing education, walking through real projects, and verifying and consulting on LEED for Homes projects. Join us on September 10th for another free webinar series, America's Oldest Net Positive Home Remodel. How did they do it? This is a free webinar with Continuing Ed. It's one of our second LFA approved courses. Join Matt Grokoff as he takes us through his house. He's really great to listen to if you haven't heard him yet. And then we'll be joined by Jay Hall, the LEED for Homes reviewer on LEED v4. Understanding LEED v4, that's going to be 8 one-hour sessions taking us through the fall, and that webinar series is available on our AES education page as of right now. Get involved, become a member, become a sponsor, volunteer intern. Go ahead and check out 2 years' worth of free recorded continuing education webinars at our continuing education spot. And new recently, go ahead and submit some professional articles and blogs on residential green building. We'd love to get the word out about your ideas and learn more from you. Last, this course is approved for continuing education through NARI Green, LEED accredited through GBCI 1 hour, and then AIA, that's also HSW, and then potentially approved for your local contractor or architectural state or regional continuing ed that is needed. So without further ado, I want to introduce our Education Director, Jason LaFleur out of Chicagoland, who's going to be taking us through the LEED multifamily mixed-use mid-rise options and comparing it to LEED NC. Really thankful for Jason's time on this, and I'm going to pass it over to him.
All right, thank you, Brett. While we're switching over here, it looks like everybody, my audio is coming through okay. Thank you, Brett. Let me share my screen and get the presentation up here, and we should be good to go. All right, so hopefully everybody has seen the title slide for the program today. It's LEED Multifamily Options, and basically we'll be talking about the residential rating systems that the USGBC has through the LEED umbrella, including the LEED Midrise program that's relatively new, and talk about its applicability for mixed-use developments such as the project shown here. You see first floor retail and 4 stories of living units above it, and also applicability with dorms and other types of residential structures, residential occupancy in what might traditionally be called commercial construction. So just briefly overview myself. I do work with the Alliance. I also run a company called Eco Achievers. Do a lot of work in education and verification of residential green building projects through the LEED program. Also recently started working with some passive house projects. And I'm pretty active with the USGBC chapter in Illinois and have helped launch an annual tour of green homes called the Green Built Home Tour. And if you happen to be on a road trip through Illinois or local to the area, it's a great opportunity to see a lot of really focused on single-family homes. The weekend of July 26th and 27th, including what will be interesting. One of I think it's the first single-family home to pursue LEED as well as passive house and interestingly the Living Building Challenge. So should be a pretty good event if you're in the area. So just kind of an overview of our objectives today. We're going to be talking about the different certification options for residential buildings in the LEED program, and do some comparison between the LEED multifamily mid-rise and LEED new construction certification options. the goal of being able to help you and your projects sort of identify what might be the best fit if you're looking to pursue certification and choose the right path for your project. Just kind of an overview of the market in terms of the residential market. This is about a year-old data now, but still an interesting trend, showing that about 1 in 5 homes that are being built, have some level of green associated with them, whether it be an Energy Star building or a LEED building or some other program, local, regional, green building, etc. But it's representing a pretty large chunk of the market. And we see from homeowners some pretty common benefits. Whether it's a homeowner or a tenant in a rental situation, what people care about with their green buildings is the fact that it's a healthier place for them and their families to live in. And I think that's important, especially if you're doing market rate development and looking at sort of the lifestyle elements of your project. Lower operating costs are, of course, attractive to the tenants, as well as building owner operating costs that could be lower as well. And it's interesting, these really echo the triple bottom line that you often hear people talk about, of benefits accruing to people, planet, and profit. The challenge is that there are a lot of definitions of green. Some folks have various ways to define it, and it kind of makes it difficult to market a project that would, without getting into the whole greenwashing or unfounded claims of how sustainable a building might be. And it's one of the advantages to a national program like LEED is that it helps provide some metrics and third-party verification that helps quantify the green elements of a building in the way that they come together. Such as this project, it's a 6-story building right in downtown Minneapolis at 2nd and Hennepin, and it's a first-floor retail. You can see actually it's got a Whole Foods pretty much throughout half the building footprint, and market rate residential apartments above that. This project actually just certified in January of this year at LEED Silver. And we're actually, the LEED for Homes program has really been growing quite exponentially. Just announced over 50,000 units have been certified through the program, and a very, very large majority, 74%, are multifamily projects, right? So LEED for Homes, not just for single-family homes. And a fairly significant chunk of that is actually in the affordable housing realm, right? So where you have 80% of the area media income or below, in terms of the residents in the building. And a lot of that growth has happened in the past couple of years, showing some serious momentum in the market for pursuing certification. Another way to look at this is the growth of the LEED program over time. So the last slide showed certifications, and these are registrations. There's over 150,000, I believe, now. And these are people that are committing their project to certification, probably early in the design process. So it's been a very nice positive growth chart for the LEED program on the residential side. The other interesting compounding factor is the fact that many state energy codes have been increasingly adopted more rigorous codes. This is showing for the residential low-rise, like 3 stories or under type of market. You can see a small percentage of the states. Right now, there's I think 4 states that have adopted the IECC 2012, and about half of them have adopted the 2009 version of the Energy Code, and that really helps set a foundation for an energy-efficient building, and that's ultimately the foundation of LEED as well. So it kind of helps dovetail into that fairly nicely. On the commercial side, you can see the states that have adopted commercial energy codes in terms of ASHRAE 90.1, and it's actually a somewhat larger number of states have adopted the the 90.1-2010 Energy Code. So some of the measures that are being implemented are being done already. Now, there is just a note, there is a difference between the 2007 and the 2010 versions of ASHRAE 90.1, and that does come into play with LEED Midrise, depending on when you're going to be registering your project, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But ultimately what we're seeing is that LEED is becoming a dominant brand in the market for people that are building at, that want to showcase their project as being higher quality, and implementing a lot of the best practices in the market. Looking at some additional homeowner data, it's interesting to see some survey results such as this that show that after living in a green home, many people would recommend that to their friends and family. And on a commercial side perspective, some recent survey results or research results coming out that show the operating cost decreases, and how that relates to the cost of the green investments, right? So a new green building might be recovering those costs on average within 8 years, and a retrofit actually would be a little bit quicker, which kind of makes sense if you think about the retrofit situation. And another interesting, I really like this data that's come out from CoStar, which is a very large real estate database service. And when looking at the residential real estate development market, they're looking at developers want properties that have and provide the highest returns for their ownership. And it's interesting that the attributes that are most important for renters in the survey that CoStar performed with that, what would people be willing to pay a premium for, was basically what people were asked. And a number of measures they were asked to choose, and LEED certification was the second most important feature to the apartment renter, only after being in a central business district area. The researchers further found that renters on average would pay a premium of about 24% for an apartment building that was LEED certified. This seems a little bit optimistic, but still, the fact that they might be willing to pay more is worth noting. And one of the other interesting aspects is that as of July of last year, as we saw, over 120,000 units were pursuing certification through the LEED program. And in the CoStar study, they have a little quote saying, nearly 90% of the units in the residential LEED programs are from multifamily buildings. And as far as market share goes, during 2012, over 10% of all new U.S. multifamily buildings were choosing LEED certification. It's pretty significant development in the market. Oh, there we go. There's also been a lot of increases. We saw 44% of the LEED units that have been certified are affordable housing, and there's various reasons that LEED is attractive to the affordable housing market. One is that the increased third-party verification that can help provide accountability to donors and supporters. There oftentimes are state or federal tax incentives for developer tax credits, for example. That's kind of an interesting way this is animating, but a lower cost of living, of course. People on a restricted income can spend more money on other things besides their rent, basically. And also proactively addressing health measures for the occupants that often have a lot of significant health that are an at-risk population, and this can help, being in a green building can help reduce doctor visits, hospital trips, etc. And for some, depending on certain affordable housing organizations have found that going green has been a good way to engage with volunteers as well. So in the LEED family of the certification family, there's several different product offerings out there. A lot of people, when you talk about LEED, they're thinking of the traditional new construction rating system. Homes is sort of a newer one, and Midrise is even newer within that. And so really what they've done is create a residential occupancy rating system, homes and Midrise, for those projects that are basically apartment or condo or type of living situations. And it's a different rating system that's more focused on the residential occupancy. So the LEED new construction is sort of the standard that people are traditionally think of when you hear about LEED, and it's really written for more so for commercial office type of buildings where you might have, let's say, 8-hour occupants, and can be used for new and gut rehab buildings that are residential 4 stories and higher. And that's what it's been used on in the past, such as this project in New York called the Solaire. I mean, as you can see, it's a new construction, very high-rise building. The issues are in the residential market for those buildings that are somewhat on a smaller scale. There are issues around cost and applicability of the program, of the new construction program for residential occupancy. And so USGBC developed a LEED for Homes program, which, despite the name Homes, is applicable to both single-family and multifamily types of projects. It's really designed to be more project team friendly, working and integrating with existing standards in the residential market, existing programs, for example, such as Energy Star for homes or Energy Star multifamily high-rise. And one of the other nice things is that there's sort of a decentralized delivery and certification model where you work with folks such as green raters on the ground in the field to verify many of the measures as built with a site visit and performance testing. So it's a little bit different. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. The LEED for Homes program generally applies to pretty much any type of project that is residential. They do single-family homes, of course. You could also do gut rehab projects, whether they're single or multifamily, as long as you're basically improving or changing the thermal envelope of the structure, as well as the all-new mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. The focus of today, though, we're going to be thinking outside of the house and looking more at the multifamily types of situations in terms of applying this to a mixed use, a dormitory, for example, maybe assisted living, maybe condo conversions. And the key requirement for this is that if 50% of the square footage in the space is residential in nature, then you can go through the residential program. If most of the space is commercial, then you're probably going to go through one of the commercial rating systems, such as the LEED B, D, and C. In the LEED for Homes program, there are a few credit categories that are new, a little bit different for folks that have worked in the commercial space. They've broken out the sustainable sites category and added in a new one called locations and linkages. Also added a area called innovation design and one called awareness and education. We're kind of in an interesting phase right now with the transition into the new version 4 rating system that Brett was talking about. We're going to have a workshop on that in the fall, an online webinar series. Some of these are actually going to be consolidated, and they're basically going to be made congruent with the commercial rating system. So regardless of the property, you'll be having the same categories being used. And so actually I think they brought in innovation design into the new commercial system, called it integrated processes, and a few other changes in here as well. But in terms of the point distribution for the rating system as it is now, it's sort of an arbitrary number of points of 136 based on all the credits and how they added it up. But you can see the percentage breakdowns. There's a pretty large, about a third of the points are within the energy and atmosphere section of the rating system. a large section on sustainable sites, and a very large percentage in the indoor environmental quality section, which is really one of the differentiating factors between the residential rating system and the commercial rating systems. Much more focus on and available points for the indoor air quality section. One of the other things that's kind of different with LEED is that size matters, at least home size matters, right? So in a multifamily situation, this actually comes into play as a benefit for the project teams. Typically, what we're looking at is for the number of bedrooms on average for a building. So we do a weighted average calc on a multifamily building of how many bedrooms that building has. And based on the square footage of the average unit size, also a weighted average calculation, we put those together to see what the impact on the scale of the rating system is. So what this is saying is that if your average size home is 1,900 square feet for 3 bedrooms, the rating thresholds to get to certified silver, gold, and platinum are 45 points, 60, 75, and 90. Well, if you're at a smaller home, like typical 3-bedroom apartments are probably 1,200 square feet or maybe even a little bit smaller, you actually have a lower threshold to get to because it's recognizing the efficiency of density as well as embodied energy in the materials and operational costs. So the rating system basically, the threshold goes from 45 points to 35 points. And this is something that can be very beneficial for a multifamily project and can make it much easier to get to at least the basic level of certification and encourage project teams that want to shoot for higher levels of recognition. It gives more opportunity for those points to be assigned and pursue things that help improve the quality of life of the residences. I should say that if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. I can't see them right now, but we'll look at them after the program's concluded and kind of go through and have some time to address those. All right, so a little bit about LEED for Homes Midrise Multifamily. This is actually that project that was on the title slide. This is an interior shot of the courtyard, that 7 West building in Minneapolis. And this project went through the LEED certification program under multifamily, under the Midrise program. And it's basically a standard or an adaptation of LEED for Homes that is scaled to the commercial type of multifamily developments that we see from 4-story and above buildings. They used to have a cap on the range of 4 to 6 stories. They've removed the cap and made it somewhat flexible, and we'll talk about that more a little later. But it's a great way that the rating system has been adapted to address the multifamily market. And the reason is that there's a lot of projects in that range of mid-rise range that have expressed interest in LEED but found the costs for certification under the new construction program to be quite prohibitive. And LEED for Homes was being used on low-rise multifamily already. So that any 3-story and under building that wants to get LEED certified has to go through LEED for Homes. And so what they did was Midrise was developed to sort of offer project teams the choice. Right now, you can go through, if you have a 4 or 5-story building, for example, you can go through either the LEED Midrise program or the LEED new construction program. And in terms of eligibility, again, one of the key requirements is that it's be at least 50% of the square footage be residential or residential associated use, such as corridors, common areas. Maybe you have a community room or a workout room on a larger building, things of that nature. And for projects that are, like I said, 3 stories and under, they must use LEED for Homes. If you're more than a certain number of stories, you would use LEED NC. And the reason that's a question mark there is it used to be 6 stories, but now they're sort of made that a little higher. We do have some 8-story mixed-use projects going through the LEED Midrise program, and upon USGBC is willing to entertain high-rise projects going through the multifamily Midrise program as well. So, if it's a good fit, if it seems like it might be a good fit, it's sort of an open-ended cap, which is why it's a question mark now. This is sort of a brief map. It's a little dated, showing where Midrise projects are happening around the country. It's a newer rating system. It came out in 2010, so it's not as adopted yet as other rating systems. And just like other versions of LEED, it is a building level certification. So even if you have like a mixed use facility, the retail section doesn't get excluded or anything. It's just the building as a whole gets certified for the project under the LEED rating system. And one of the in addition to having 50% of the square footage be a residential associated space, one of the other aspects is that each unit has to have a cooking facility, and that it could be a traditional, like you see in the picture here, showing a fridge, stove, there's a sink over to the right, etc. The requirements of a stove are somewhat flexible, so if there's a dedicated area for cooking, you have like a small fridge and a prep area and a microwave or something of that nature. There could be that could be an opportunity for discussion. So we might see little studio apartments, maybe some assisted living might have those types of facilities. You'd want to talk to a LEED for Homes provider or a Green Rater about a specific situation like that, but that could be a potential candidate for LEED for Homes if that's the case. One of the other things that really differentiates between the low-rise residential and the mid-rise residential is how the building systems are configured. So if you have central HVAC systems, even if it's centralized and it's under 3 stories, you would be going through the low-rise LEED for Homes program. But when you start to get central systems in a 4-story and above building, that's where LEED mid-rise kind of kicks in, and what we're looking at is is how the energy use is modeled under the ASHRAE 90.1 energy modeling guidelines. One of the things that is worth noting is that if you're at a 4 or 5 story building, for example, and all of the units will have their own HVAC systems as well as their own individual unit hot water heaters, as shown in the photo here, then you may actually be able to pursue LEED for Homes under the low-rise program instead of the mid-rise program. And the difference there is that low-rise does not use an ASHRAE 90.1 energy model. It uses what we call a HERS rating, and HERS, the Home Energy Rating Score modeling. So it's a little bit more scalable. It should be much more affordable than going through a ASHRAE 90.1 energy model. So just worth noting, if you have unit-specific mechanicals at a 4 or 5 story building, you might be going through the low-rise program. So here's a case study, 222 Hennepin. You saw the finished photo of this. This is a rendering, obviously. Very large, 6-story, 284-unit apartment building in downtown Minneapolis with Whole Foods on the first floor. This was kind of interesting. They actually had this was a site of a car dealer that had a parking deck in the middle of their site, and they actually retained that parking deck and built a building around it, and added on some extra tenant amenity space on top of the deck, like a little pool area and party deck, basically. This project, when we started to do the energy model, this was one that I was the Green Rater on, and when we started to do the energy model, we saw that the plans for using the mechanical systems were fairly inefficient that were going to be installed in unit on this building. And in order to make up for the mechanical inefficiency and meet the ASHRAE 90.1-2007 requirements, they had to do some trade-off somewhere. And so this project selected to do a 1-inch continuous layer of exterior rigid foam board to improve the envelope to the point where they could get above the ASHRAE 90.1 criteria. So the issue with LEED Midrise is that you not only do you have to meet ASHRAE 90.1-2007, you have to exceed it by at least 15%. So that's the prerequisite, and if in certain situations that can prove to be quite a challenge for the project team. Other lessons learned here. There was some air sealing issues between unit party walls, just to sort of isolate them from one another. That was a critical area that needed attention. One of the advantages of working with a Green Radar is they come out during mid-construction, and so we were able to see that happening and sort of do some testing on units as they were completed, so that before that problem was replicated throughout all 284 units, we could catch that and correct the issues. They also had planned to exhaust kitchens and bathrooms to the outdoors for good air quality. This is fairly common in a very, very cold climate like Minneapolis. It's less common when you get to somewhat warmer climates. I live in Chicago, and this issue is the requiring kitchens to be exhausted to the outdoors is one of the barriers that I've hit with a lot of potential project teams already on this for the Midrise program. But again, indoor air quality, bigger focus in the residential rating systems than the commercial rating systems. So a little bit of comparison about the process for LEED Midrise and new construction. The delivery team, I've kind of talked about this a little bit and given sort of a preview. It's quite different. There are some technical differences that we'll talk about in more detail. I sort of gave you a preview on that as well. And we'll talk about the documentation and submittal requirements, which are significantly different. So the traditional LEED new construction process, you have a design and construction team working with the LEED AP and a commissioning agent building this LEED standard, building off the LEED standard developed by USGBC. And the certification happens through a entity called the Green Building Certification Institute. In the residential market, it's more decentralized than this, and you actually work with a Green Radar and provider organization, and the Green Radar comes on site to verify many of the measures that are being implemented at multiple points during the process, during construction as well as at completion. And oftentimes we find that a design and construction team, they may have a LEED AP or they may not have a LEED AP. But we sort of have the Green Radar taking the place of a commissioning agent and the provider taking a place of the GBCI. Again, for comparison, we'll go back. You can see the players on the commercial side. On the residential side, both for the Lowrise and Midrise, we have a Green Radar verification process. And it's a pretty significant difference, and it actually helps reduce costs because many of the activities of the Green Radar are performed through visual verification that the building is designed or built as designed, and that can, in many cases, replace the need for some documentation. So if a project is claiming credit for insulating the hot water lines, for example, the Green Radar will see that when we go out for the mid-construction pre-drywall visits. All right, the certification process for certification in the Midrise is a little bit different too. So it's certified through the Green Radar and provider, which, as I sort of alluded to, requires less documentation, and that's different than going through LEED Online. So that right now we don't have the letter templates and forms that are submitted by project teams through LEED Online. It's really all contained in the residential LEED world. It's all contained in a single Excel file, all the required documentation. So it kind of simplifies it a little bit. And just sort of I sort of mentioned this already. Another way to look at this is, the providers is sort of taking the place of where traditionally GBCI is in the certification process, and the Green Radar is taking the place of the commissioning agent that would typically be involved. So the Green Radar does some types of performance testing. We actually do envelope leakage testing. We do a blower door test on the residential units to look at unit compartmentalization, or how well air sealed the units are from one another, which you may have run into if you've ever done a LEED E-bomb project on a residential building. That's required for testing to make sure that there's minimal smoke transfer between units. But we're doing that also to test to the leakage to the outdoors as well. And but we're not necessarily commissioning mechanical equipment like you would traditionally have in the LEED NC process. We do some HVAC commissioning, such as testing flow rates, CFM flow rates for HVAC supplies, as well as for exhausts. We want to make sure bathrooms are pulling moisture out, so we check the flow rates as built, as well as kitchen exhausts, and also check the fresh air ventilation going to the units too. So in the multifamily Midrise program, again, there's this bigger emphasis on indoor air quality, human health. It includes areas that you've probably not seen in the commercial rating system, such as issues around combustion safety, addressing radon issues, which are quite prevalent in parts of the country, and helping ensure the indoor air quality through mechanical exhaust. So these are some unique issues that weren't addressed in any of the other rating systems. So it has some impact on and technical challenges for the project team. So on the indoor environmental quality side, some of the biggest changes in design that impact a multifamily project are around making sure kitchens exhaust the outdoors, that you're not using a recirculating hood, for example. And this is partly an energy thing, but more so an indoor environmental quality issue. When we build these tighter homes or tighter apartment units, then when somebody's cooking, those pollutants from cooking stay in the air. And the moisture from cooking, such as boiling a pot of spaghetti, stays in the unit, right? And we want to make sure that in order to have a healthy, durable structure, that sources of moisture and pollutants are removed. And so this is a prerequisite to have kitchens and baths ducted to the outdoors. Basically meeting ASHRAE 62.2 standards. That's all part of ASHRAE 62.2. And what in the multifamily Midrise program, you meet ASHRAE 62.2 for the in-unit residential spaces, and you have to meet ASHRAE 62.1 for the residential associated common or any retail other types of spaces in the building. So that's sort of a design change that has to be planned for. The biggest difference between multifamily Midrise and new construction is that Midrise requires mechanical ventilation be done, and it be delivered at a unit-specific level, not being delivered through relying on operable windows, expecting people in Minnesota to open their windows and throughout the winter is a little bit unrealistic. And we also, like I said, it has to be dedicated specific outdoor air for the unit. So having a system where you're providing fresh air into hallways and pressurizing the corridor, hoping that the air comes into the unit, is a little too uncontrolled. So what would be required would be, if you were going to do that type of system, fresh air delivery through through a ducted plenum in the ceiling of the hallway, for example, with a specific outlet into each unit, as opposed to basically helping to prevent any cross-contamination between units, both for potential smoking issues as well as other contaminants that might be generated in a specific unit. So one other way that we look at this is that in Midrise, there's a prerequisite around compartmentalization. So we do what I mentioned, a test, a blower door test, to verify that the units are properly air sealed from one another, minimizing any transfer between units. one of the nice side benefits of this is that sound often travels through air. So if you're making units fairly airtight from one another, you're also making them more acoustically isolated from one another. The biggest, this ends up being one of the biggest construction challenges for project teams, making sure that there is a continuous air barrier and that's defined for each unit, and looking at any shared or demising walls and making sure penetrations between those are properly sealed, or if you have chases for utility stacks running between units, that they're properly sealed. I mean, some of this is required for fireproofing anyway, but it's not always implemented at a true air barrier type of level within each unit. This is actually also going to be an option coming soon in the commercial energy codes. It's actually in the energy code for the first time, doing blower door testing on buildings on the commercial side. All right, so for technical challenges on the energy side of things, the biggest challenge is meeting and exceeding ASHRAE 90.1-2007 by 15%. So this specifies using some multifamily simulation guidelines that the EPA has developed that are sort of a tweak on ASHRAE 90.1 Appendix G for the energy modeling standard. So, and we do actually verify the model as built, and so if there are changes that happen, we go back and update the energy model accordingly, and not just do it as designed, but as built. So this ends up resulting in people focusing more on reduced envelope leakage, and what we actually do in terms of performance testing for that envelope leakage is basically testing at the individual unit level, not usually at the whole building level. So for those of you that may not have seen it before, this is actually a photo of a blower door. So when we were testing some of the units at that project in Minnesota, and again, the simulation guidelines that LEED refers to is developed by the EPA through their Energy Star multifamily high-rise program. So there's a set of simulation guidelines that you can see out there that addressed specific items within the residential units. So the Green Radar is responsible for doing that, as well as doing the testing and verification for those systems as well. One of the other aspects of LEED residential, both low-rise and mid-rise, we have to have detailed heat load calculations performed that show what the loads are going to be at a room-by-room level for every unit, to make sure that the mechanical equipment is properly sized and the ductwork is properly designed to deliver the appropriate CFM to address those heating loads in each unit. One recommended strategy that sometimes folks will do is to do a sample air sealing. So maybe do a mock-up of, typically you build from the ground up, so like the first floor is going to be further along, maybe drywall one unit, and we could do a compartmentalization test and test that unit before it's any issues are repeated throughout the structure. This is congruent with the Energy Star Midrise multifamily mid-rise program. All right, so part 4, documentation. This is the part that I like the best because it's the shortest. Basically, when you're going through LEED for homes or LEED mid-rise, there's a lot less paperwork and documentation involved. Everything that's needed comes from a single Excel file, and it is the project checklist itself, accountability forms that are signed off on by various trades, and a durability management plan developed by the project team. It's sort of basically a quality assurance checklist that's project specific. So there's no LEED online, no letter templates. A lot of visual verification replaces most of the documentation requirements for specific credits. There are some things that the Green Radar still needs supporting documentation on, such as spec sheets for the appliances and HVAC equipment, for example, any material attributes in terms of their emissions if you're going for those credits, or recycled content or things of that nature. But the actual submittal, what actually goes to USGBC, is fairly short. It's a few PDF files ultimately. So the project checklist, you can download these from usgbc.org. I'm not really going to go into the checklist in detail, but just let you know that the checklists are up there, and the Excel files are a little bit more involved than probably what you've typically seen on other LEED projects. Accountability form, this is sort of what I was talking about. This would be where it says areas of accountability. You would see specific credits. So the Green Raiders caping was installed as per the design, but they're not trained to verify that the design meets the drought-tolerant criteria for a specific credit, for example. So at some point, some professionals need to take accountability for certain items, and that's what the accountability forms are used for. So typically we see them from the landscape architect, we see some from the HVAC mechanical engineer, and maybe a civil engineer, the architect, and sometimes you might even get specific suppliers signing accountability forms, so that's a little rarer. But that's sort of the aspect of documentation. The final item is a durability assessment, which looks at, we want to know what the characteristics are that the building's exposed to in terms of the site characteristics and climate characteristics, and then sort of identify, okay, based on this, what are the risks of various things destroying the building? How durable is the building going to be given this data that's been collected? And more importantly, on the inspection checklist, what are you doing in your design to address those risk factors? So how are you going to be keeping exterior water away from the foundation, for example? And a lot of times people have these already in place. There might even be on their drawing sets that have been in development. And it's an issue of basically listing the item and identifying the space in the drawings for where that item is. And this becomes a quality assurance checklist that's used, that's signed off by the contractor, as well as for 3 points, you can have the Green Raider verify every one of the measures. So it's something that's fairly commonly pursued. Provides that accountability check. Okay, so a few case studies here. We'll go through. We have some projects that have gone through on a senior housing side. This is a 3-story low-rise project, but it's significant in that it was fairly efficient and also had a very fast occupancy. It was a 2-week lease-up period on this, which is pretty fantastic. A supportive housing project in Milwaukee. This is a multifamily low-rise. It was the first one in Wisconsin. Moderately efficient, and did some nice materials reuse on here, and including the foundation for the structure, and implemented some very high efficiency plumbing fixtures, providing a nice space to live for the people that were formerly homeless. Little studio apartments. Similar project in Columbus, Ohio, much larger. This was a very large building on a very small site, so they actually did pretty good in terms of density, bonus, things of that nature, and did a good job exceeding the ASHRAE 90.1 standard by 20%. So that starts to get into some fairly significant points on the energy and atmosphere section. We also have some projects that have, the new types of dorms that are being built typically meet the LEED for Homes criteria of having a kitchen or cooking facility. So one example of that is in central Michigan. It's a project that we worked on that had a pretty significant energy savings. So this was a low rise. We're using the HERS reference point as for energy comparison. Fairly tight structure. And this was a pretty successful project as well. 94 units, student housing, and ended up achieving. Another case study in Ohio. It was also a college dorm situation. Went even further, adding in geothermal. Did some reforestation on the project, and the owner said they had a competitive advantage in attracting tenants to this project. So you see some quite successful stories here. Another project at College of St. Benedict in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Again, some really good focus on just improving the lifestyle for the occupants. One of the things, again, that people find valuable is the fact that these places are healthier. If you build it tight, you have to ventilate it right, and by doing so, you're going to create a healthier place for the occupants. And the Green Rater is providing a lot of that third-party verification performance testing throughout the project, ensuring that all the goals of the project are being met. Costs, that's always an issue. A lot of these items, whether or not you're pursuing LEED, there is a fairly significant cost. To get to the high performance levels attributed to LEED, it's a little bit further, right up the pinnacle. In terms of the certification hard costs, the registration and application fees are fairly scalable from the provider in USGBC. And the LEED for Homes Green Rater really is doing most of the work, and probably therefore has one of the larger portions of the hard costs related to LEED. So actually I have a little bit of a case study here. This is a project I recently have been working with. They're in design development right now. This is a 4-story, 46-unit affordable housing project in northern Illinois, a little bit outside of it's in one of the Chicago suburbs. And this developer selected to pursue LEED in order to earn tax credits from the State of Illinois Housing Authority. And so the architect, Kuhn Associates, has been doing a great work and trying to optimize this. They're going to be doing some fantastic envelope features, including a couple inches of continuous rigid foam board to really help minimize thermal bridging and create an airtight air barrier on the exterior side of the structure, keeping the structure nice and warm. And what they had originally thought of going through LEED new construction with this 4-story building until I happened to have a conversation with somebody on the project team. And so we started to do an analysis to see, okay, well, what are the costs involved with pursuing new construction and mid-rise construction or certification. And so we looked at the registration certification costs involved. We looked at the third-party verification, such as the commissioning agent or Green Rater costs, and got a feel for what the soft costs are on the project. In terms of hard costs, in order to get to the minimum level of certification under LEED new construction, they were going to have to basically buy points by doing things like bicycle racks, bicycle storage on a senior housing project, doing the light pollution prevention or reduction credit, which the contractor estimated would be around $10,000, adding in green power offsets for 35% of the power, and implementing the waste management and operations credit, which had a fairly significant cost. The design changes for LEED mid-rise would be requiring that unit-specific fresh air be ducted from the corridors into the units and making sure that the kitchens were exhausted to the outdoors. And so the mechanical engineer estimated that at about $45,000. So it did have a higher hard cost, but the soft costs, overall costs, when we start to look at both, they were a little bit higher on the new construction side. But perhaps more significantly too, they were, just by the nature of the residential program being a better fit, they were that $69,000 to achieve LEED certified was going to be barely to get to the minimum threshold of 45 points, whereas with the mid-rise program, they were scoring in the mid-silver range on the certification rating system from our preliminary assessment. So it's kind of an interesting little case space. Another project that I worked on, there's a great quote that the property manager gave me from one of the tenants. They specifically moved into this building because it was a LEED building adjacent to the University of Minnesota. This is these kind of testaments are great, and the amount of time saved from the leasing office side was significant for certain folks like that. So we're getting to the point of where it's decision time. I think Midrise is a more relevant rating system, but you have to obviously account for some decision factors, right? So is the home's residential rating system or new construction going to be more applicable? Again, LEED for new construction is very familiar to contractors, larger MEP firms, architects, etc., and maybe more appropriate for larger institutional projects such as a high-rise project. Also, it has a lot more lenient indoor environmental quality requirement the residential programs do. Some of the pros on the LEED for Home side is that it focuses on as-built residential priorities, including the indoor environmental quality, serves smaller scale building, and has smaller soft costs associated with it. It does align with other programs out there, such as green communities, often used for affordable housing, and LEED neighborhood development. There's a performance pathway for points through if you're in a LEED ND area. So at the end of the day, trying to decide what's best for you is going to come down to several factors, including familiarity, cost, certification time, which is probably quicker on the residential projects, as well as the documentation effort required. And just to recap the gray areas between NC and homes in terms of applicability, anything 2 to 3 stories is definitely a LEED for Homes low-rise project. For those items that are 4 to 5 stories, it would go through the low-rise if you have decentralized HVAC and mechanical systems. Otherwise, you would be going through a 4 or 5 story building would go through the LEED mid-rise. Project 6 to 8 stories, especially starting in LEED version 4, anything 8 stories or under has to go through LEED for Homes or LEED mid-rise with LEED version 4, assuming 50% of the space is residential. And for those stories above 8, project teams will have the choice of either pursuing LEED new construction, or BD&C as it's going to be called, or going through LEED mid-rise. So there's the choice for the higher rise type of projects. LEED version 4 is available now for projects and required as of June 1st of next year. So some of the differences with LEED version 4 is that just much higher technical rigor, bigger focus on performance testing, performance thresholds, streamlining the rating system a little bit. Kind of running out of time, so I'm going to skip through these. Like Brett was mentioning, we do have a full workshop series coming up on LEED version 4, which you can tend to learn a little bit more from. But one of the things on the multifamily side to plan for if you're looking at a version 4 product is that measurement becomes important, and building level water metering, energy metering, natural gas metering is one of the things that will be important for multifamily projects to think about on a unit level basis. The other big change between version 3 and version 4, or I guess LEED mid-rise and between now and version 4, is that the baseline standard goes from 2007 to 2010, which is a little bit more stringent and was going to require teams to look at a lot of new areas in order to get to 15% beyond the ASHRAE 90.1 2010 standard. So that's the conclusion of the formal presentation, and with that we'll kind of have some time for some questions and answers here. But if you have to leave, I understand. I went a little longer than I wanted to, but I appreciate you sticking around and look forward to seeing any questions.
Hey everybody, this is Brett here from the Alliance. Can you hear me now? I apologize for my vocals at the beginning. Can you hear me, Jason?
Yes.
Hey guys, great. I can see all your questions down in the chat. Go ahead and send a couple over. We got a few piling up here that I want to get to. The first one I want to focus in on. We've got actually Keith Wynn from Catalyst Partners down here in Grand Rapids with the Alliance with us. They're a fantastic company that works on LEED commercial projects, and thankful that you could join us, Keith. And Keith had a couple questions here that I wanted to touch base on, which are really good questions. The first one is it's related to energy modeling and the HERS rater, and so the question is, how is energy modeling data submitted and reviewed, and why is the HERS rater not included in that?
So on a Lowrise project, the HERS rater is the one that's doing the energy modeling. On a Midrise project, typically the training that HERS raters have isn't enough to be doing an ASHRAE 90.1 energy model. So there's typically somebody involved that has experience doing 90.1 modeling, especially with the those multifamily simulation guidelines. So it's oftentimes a separate consultant than the green rater or HERS rater on the project. It doesn't have to be that way. It just, I think, from a specialization perspective, it makes sense to do it that way in many cases. I think it makes sense for the HERS rater to be involved in discussions, or for the green rater to be doing that, because ultimately they'll be doing the green rater is the one that will be doing the unit compartmentalization testing, and that's an important factor in the certification process. So I think that sort of answers the question that he was asking.
Yeah. So the next one I had was, I guess it's pretty general. We're obviously going to be sharing this whole PowerPoint with you. There were some questions about the one particular study, NC versus LEED for homes, and some of the costs associated with that. Would the developer who released that data be, I guess, someone that could be contacted if someone has further questions about those claims?
Yeah, you could contact me, and I will. I'll see if they're open to it. If not the developer, maybe somebody on the design team.
Yeah. I mean, there was an interesting thought about the fact that they would have had to use bicycles on a senior housing when oftentimes, not to say seniors wouldn't use bicycles. In fact, hopefully they do. But if that's not the normal thing, like a college dorm or a regular multifamily housing, it's interesting to see that would be a credit that they would even have to consider.
Right, and they were planning some bike racks. I think they just had to increase the area in order to meet the percentage threshold in LEED NC, and that's where the extra cost was coming from. Sure.
Hey guys, please put your comments into the chat there. I can see all of them. I certainly want to get all of your questions answered. We've got about 5 more minutes. We can stick around here. I'm sure you guys have tons of questions. Real quick, we're going to be sending out the PowerPoint here. We're going to be sending out a little quiz and a survey. You're going to have to take the 10-question quiz just so we, can verify that you actually listened in. Take that quiz. We'll be sending that out, and then once you complete that, you'll get your continuing ed and your certificate. And so look out for that. We'll also be sending over a coupon code for one of our upcoming courses that we have. Again, we have the LEED B4 fall session led by Jay Hall, the LEED for Homes reviewer. We've got a couple of free webinars coming up in the fall. And we have the Implementing LEED for Homes course, where you actually bring a real project that you have in mind or one that you've done before for your homework and run it through this session. And when you actually complete the session, you'll have basically a preliminary plan review done for either a real project or one you've done before that you just want to learn on. More of a hands-on process. So we're doing voting for that. Voting ends tonight. It's a you-focused course starting in the week of July 16th, and we'll be sending you a discount for that, or there's discounts if you're members of one of your local AIA USGBC chapters as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at some more questions. Anthony had sent me a question. I know Anthony, does a lot of great work with the chapter, the DRC, Detroit Regional Chapter, and he was wondering, I think I answered his question wrong actually in the chat. He was wondering if the V4 documentation will be the same. And I said yes, short answer, but really, especially if you're doing a low rise and you're using Energy Star, technically, Jason, you could agree that, the documentation is actually changing and just going through the new 4 Energy Star version 3, so that's eliminating essentially all of your durability planning. But you still have the accountability form and, of course, the checklist. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, I think both for low-rise and mid-rise, there still will be the core documentation submittals of the checklist, and the accountability forms are still in place.
Great. I had a question. Will see certificates be emailed to attendees? So again, yes, we will be sending out the quiz and the survey. Once you take the quiz and the survey, and we can verify that you actually listened in, we will be sending out the certificate to validate your continuing ed. Any other specific questions related to this? Otherwise, I'll be sending out Jason's contact information. My contact information will be there. If you're in a particular area and you want to engage with a local provider, there are about 38 or so LEED for Homes providers around the U.S. and in Canada, and also serving across the seas now internationally, China, India, United Arab Emirates. If you go to the Green Rater Locator tool on the USGBC's website, you can find any kind of local Green Raters who are serving your area, who have a ton of knowledge and can help you relevantly to your climate zone and local issues as well. Well, I don't see any other questions. Any final parting words, Jason?
No, just appreciate your time, and if anybody has further questions or that they'd like, feel free to reach out to Brett or myself, and we'll be happy to try to work with you and see if there's a good fit.
Yeah,